Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the channel. Today we've got more UFC picks here. Of course, the weekly UFC video in the main event. You have got Tsarukyan taking on Dariush in the lightweight division from the Moody Center in Austin, Texas. Now you can tell this is not the normal setup. I had like a mix-up on flights, so this is why I don't have my setup with me. There's no editing. There's no graphics, unfortunately, this week, and there's no music in the background. Again, I'm just making the best of what I can with the situation. The next video, the next UFC video, we'll be back with the proper format. But for today, you're just gonna see my face, and I'll link timestamps in the description down below. So if you want to skip to whatever fight you want to see, just go straight to it. And yeah, so that's how we're gonna do it. This video might be a little bit shorter considering I am filming this on an iPhone. I have my computer right here that I'll be looking at in terms of stuff for the fights. But yeah, it'll just be, you're just gonna see this for now. Sorry, this is gonna be the way it's gonna be this week. But next week again for that card with Chris Gutierrez and Song Yadong in the main event, we'll have the actual setup for that. So my apologies if there's anything different with the audio, if it sounds different, if it's louder, if it's softer. I don't think it's gonna be softer, but I don't have my microphone here. I really just don't have anything. So let's do it. You've got 13 fights on this card. In the main event, again, Tsarukyan taking on Dariush, but we've got 13 fights to get through. And the first one will be a fight between Jamie Lynn Horth and her opponent, Veronica Hardy. So Jamie Lynn Horth is undefeated. She is 6-0 coming into this one. Her first fight in the UFC was a win over Haley Cowan. It was, Cowan's been booked in a million fights, but her one fight that actually happened was the fight against the Canadian in Jamie Lynn Horth. Horth, again, picked up the victory in that fight, won that fight on the feet. Haley Cowan tried to mix it up on the ground, but Horth was really able to go in there and outbox her in the rounds where the fight was on the feet. She'll be taking on Veronica Hardy in this one, the formerly known Veronica Macedo. She is 2-4 in the UFC, but in this, recent stint at least, or really just her last fight in 2023, she beat Juliana Miller. She fought, of course, didn't ever take a break from the UFC, but went in, lost a fight at the beginning of the pandemic in 2020 to Bia Malecki, came back, beat Juliana Miller in her last fight, obviously the Ultimate Fighter winner in Juliana Miller, beat her, I believe that was in the card in Europe, yeah, that was one in England, beat her by unanimous decision on that Leon Edwards and Kamaru Usman 3 card. Again, Hardy beat a fighter who, in all fairness, isn't very good. I don't think all that highly of Juliana Miller. She won an Ultimate Fighter show that didn't have the best fighters, for being honest. Like, none of them are in the UFC, really, or at least doing damage elsewhere outside the UFC. But Hardy picked up the win. She was able to go in there, dominate on the feet, and dominate with the wrestling. Juliana Miller tried to throw up a lot of stuff, a lot of submissions off of her back, but nothing really came of those submissions. So, again, Hardy's got that win there, but neither fighter here in this one has really impressed me all that much. Sure, again, Horth is 1-0 in the UFC, but Haley Cowan, I would not say is the best opponent either, if we're just being real on that note. Her run outside the UFC isn't great, only won one fight in LFA. Horth has been able to show that she could win fights in the feet and on the ground. I think that's going to give a little bit of trouble to Veronica Hardy. Again, if you're putting money on this fight, I mean, you've got some balls. I just don't know what to expect here, because again, Veronica Hardy 2-4 in the UFC, but one fight in the last 3 years. Before that, you look at her UFC debut, lost to Ashley Evans-Smith, lost to Andrea Lee, lost to Jillian Robertson. They give her a fourth fight. She beats Polyana Viana, and she submits her in the first round, which is weird now because Polyana Viana has been winning fights as of late. I know she's been up and down, but still she has won fights, and then loses to Bia Malecki in her second professional MMA fight, and then beats Juliana Miller. I don't know what to get out of this one. I'm going to take Jamie Lynn Horth. I think all around Horth is better. But again, this is a weird fight starting off the card in the flyweight division. I am ever so slightly going to go with Jamie Lynn Horth. I think she picks up the victory by unanimous decision. Next up, we've got a fight between Wellington Turman and Jared Gooden. Now, shout out to Jared Gooden, who made his way back to the UFC after getting knocked out to Impa Kasanganay in ex-MMA. What did Impa Kasanganay do after that fight? Well, he got signed to the PFL, and now he is $1 million richer, and he is a world champion. And they cut that guy from the UFC. I just think it's ridiculous. I'm a big Impa guy, and I still think it's stupid they cut him in the first place, but I'm happy for Kasanganay that he has now gone out and become a world champion, given, is it a UFC caliber world championship? No. But still, if Kasanganay could beat Vadim Nemkov, double champ. Just saying. And Kasanganay, seriously, if Kasanganay beats Vadim Nemkov, truly a top 15 fighter. Like, I'm not even joking. Like, Kasanganay is on a run right now. But this next fight, Wellington Turman, and Jared Gooden. For Jared Gooden, back and forth run so far in the UFC. I mean, he's 22-9 professionally, 1-4 in the promotion, at least in the UFC. came back in second run, lost to Carlston Harris by unanimous decision. Both those guys fought it in Bukasanganai. Both those guys are not world champions now. Gooden in his first round in the UFC did go 1-3. He beats his one fight's a win over Nicholas Stoltzfus, where he wins by knockout in the first round. Drops 3 fights to the likes of Alan Jouban, Abubakar Nurmagomedov, and Randy Brown. I mean, it's all right. Jared Gooden, again, has been able to go in there in the past in the UFC, and the one win was by knockout. Gooden, it's undenying the power that he does have, but he has been beat on the ground, like in his last fight against Carlston Harris. He got beat on the ground, and Wellington Turman is not a guy who wants to necessarily strike. One of those guys fighting out at Teixeira MMA, over in Dansbury, Connecticut. He is on a 2-fight losing streak to the likes of Andre Petroski and Randy Brown. But you know what Wellington Turman wants to do? Wellington Turman wants to go in there, and he wants to wrestle, or at least he wants to apply his jiu-jitsu. Now, he really hasn't been able to do that in his last 2 fights because they gave him a wrestle heavy guy in Andre Petroski, and Randy Brown was able to neutralize whatever Wellington Turman wanted to do in that fight and was really just able to outstrike him and even take him down a couple times as well. But when Turman is on, and I think his best performance to date, I believe it was a co-main event spot, or at least just high on the card. He got Misha Serkinov on a main card of a fight night. He went in there and submitted Serkinov with an armbar in the second round. A win before that against Sam Alvey really doesn't move anybody, but still the win over Serkinov was good. Serkinov known for being a pretty wrestle-heavy guy, and he was able to neutralize him and take him down. Now, again, this is going to be a stylistic matchup here. Jared Gooden, only 2 takedowns successfully, only two successful takedowns so far in his UFC run. He's primarily going to be a striker. He's going to try and go in there and knock your head off. 11 wins by knockout in his professional career, 7 by submission. Sure, he just hasn't really shown the wrestling prowess so far in the UFC, and especially in a fight like this, I don't think he's going to really be looking to go there with Turman, considering that's where Turman is best at. So when you look at this one, again, Turman's going to be the wrestle-heavy approach. He has shown to be a little bit chinny at times. I remember when he first came into the UFC, and Turman's been around for a minute. He got knocked out by Andrew Sanchez in 2020. He got knocked out by Bruno Silva the fight after that, but he won 2 fights after. So, again, he has been hit before. He's been knocked out before. All around, I think Turman's able, though, to still pick up the victory. I think he's able to grind this one out on the ground. I don't really believe in Gooden that much. Again, he's a guy who's 1-4 in the UFC. I don't feel all that confident picking him. So I'm going to take Wellington Turman to pick up the victory. I don't think it's all that entertaining. I think Turman really just grinds out a decision. He gets him on the ground. He holds him on the ground. I think Wellington Turman goes up there and picks up a 30-27 unanimous decision victory. Again, it's nothing that's going to, get anyone's attention really. It's just going to be a win for Wellington Turman to keep him in the UFC. And it really feels like the loser of this fight does get cut from the promotion. And unfortunately, I think it will be Jared Gooden being cut for the second time. Okay, our next fight will be a fight between Ihor Potieria and Rodolfo Bellato in this one. For Ihor, of course, most well known for his win over Shogun Rua. It was Shogun's retirement fight, UFC 283, over in Brazil. And, Ihor goes in there, knocks him out in the first round, absolutely just silences that crowd over in Brazil. I mean, what did you expect to happen, really? But Potieria is going to get, he's going to get a good guy in this one in Rodolfo Bellato. Bellato, coming off that Contender Series victory, wins in the second round just in October, and immediately he gets a shot in front of a crowd in the UFC, or for the UFC over in Austin, Texas. This is a guy who went 4-0 in LFA. He was the LFA light heavyweight champion as he came into the Contender Series. He went 1-1 in the Contender, got his first shot against Vitor Petrino back in 2022. He did get knocked out, but did come back, win 2 fights in LFA, one in the Contender Series, and made his way into the UFC. I think this fight really does point to a Bellato victory. I just think Rodolfo is so much better on the feet, and this is where this fight's going to be contested. I really don't see much of this one hitting the ground. Neither of these guys have really shown to be that great of a wrestler. Ihor hasn't even successfully converted one in the UFC. I don't even think he's shot one so far. And Bellato will be more than welcome to a striking duel with Ihor in this fight. Again, I think Bellato's striking game so much better in this fight. Again, Potieria has got into 3 striking battles so far in the UFC. He's only won 1 of them, and that one win was against a 40-something-year-old Shogun Rua. The loss is Nikolai Negumereanu, lost to Carlos Olberg, and sure, I know Olberg's a really good striker who is going to get that Dominic Reyes fight he called for, which I don't understand why they're making that fight. Do they want to kill Dominic Reyes? I don't know, but, he loses to Olberg, loses to Negumereanu. I think Bellato is going to get the better out of him on the feet as well. And yes, I know Hodolfo did lose that fight to Petrino in the Contender Series in 2022, and that was, sure, only a year ago, but Petrino in his own right is an undefeated guy who's 3-0 in the UFC with a win over Anton Turklagi, Marcin Prachnio, and Modestas Bukauskas. So I don't think the loss to Petrino is honestly that damaging, and I just think you found two really good guys in the Contender in that fight, and Bellato showed 2 fights, 2 wins in LFA, winning an LFA light heavyweight championship, then going on to fight in the Contender Series again and win. I like Bellato a lot in this matchup. I think he goes out there and just dominates from pillar to post. Give me Bellato to win this fight by first round knockout. I have seen Potieria lose on the feet before. I don't think this one's any different. I think he loses. Give me Bellato to win the fight by first round knockout. Next up, Steve Garcia gets a fight here with Melk Costa. Garcia, of course, the American 14-5. Melk Costa 20-6 on the professional record. Costa made his UFC debut over in Brazil in January of this year, losing a fight to Thiago Moises, where he loses it by a rear naked choke in the second round. Beats Austin Lingo after that. His second result on the forgotten fight night card of Holly Holm and Myro Bueno Silva in the main event, but Costa beats Lingo in that one by unanimous decision. Again, Costa's really good at mixing it up. I mean, he can get it on the ground if he needs to. I know he lost the fight on Moises by losing on the ground, but he's a decent striker in his own right as well. Costa, first saw him, of course, I think, as most people did, in LFA. Actually, I first saw him in a loss in LFA, where he lost in that main event to Gomez back in 2022, but, picked up 2 wins after that, the Junior Mello win being the one that got him in the UFC on a main event for LFA 147 in November of 2022. A year later, now here he is in his 3rd fight in the UFC. He gets the mean machine, Steve Garcia, who again is 14-5. Former Bellator name is Garcia. He went 5-2 in that now, defunct promotion. But Garcia, two-fight win streak. He has won 3 out of his last 4. It's an impressive resume he has built up. At least the last 2, I would say, because Chase Hooper. Now, I never thought I would say that Chase Hooper is a really impressive name on anyone's resume, but after his win over Jordan Levitt, I think Hooper, I would not say he's ever going to be a top 15 guy, but I think really Hooper has kind of matured himself to be a guy that can get past just fighting Contender Series guys. Now, again, I'm still not that high on Hooper as a whole, but I think he's getting there. And the Shyland Ornambeka wins a huge one over in Miami, Florida. Garcia goes in there and knocks down Shyland Ornambeka with an uppercut, and then finishes him, of course, on the ground after that. So Garcia, again, in the loss to Mahashed, he gets chinned in Singapore in 2022, and then the 3 out of the 4 I was talking about, the Charlie Ontiveros win is really nothing special. So, again, the last 2 wins do look kind of decent. I was never all that high on Steve Garcia, but I do think now, again, he is showing, better results than at least I thought he was going to have in the UFC, but Melk Costa is a tough guy as well, because Costa's really going to mix it up with you. Garcia really has been a lot of stand and bang so far in the UFC, for being honest. I mean, the Ontiveros fight, he took him down a couple times. Ornambeka tried to take him down once, I think he did, but you're going to see a lot of striking out of Steve Garcia, and Melk Costa, you'll see that too, but when Costa does think he is the better grappler, he will go in there and try to mix it up on the ground either. But this fight has all the makings for someone getting knocked out, and it's got all the makings for a fight of the night too. Both these guys are willing to throw, both these guys are willing to get in that firefight, and that's what I'm expecting here. I think this is going to be a really good one. Unfortunately, I think the Horth fight and the Turman fight aren't going to be the greatest, but I think now you get the fight at light heavyweight with Botello and Potieria. Now you get this one with Garcia and Costa. I think you get 2 really good back-to-back fights. And I think Melk Costa is going to go out there and win the fight. I think he wins it by second round TKO. Again, I just think it's going to be whoever is in there longer. I think both these guys are more than willing to throw. You're going to see both of them just go for it. And I think Melk Costa will eventually get the better of Steve Garcia in that second round. But I'm really excited for this one. I wouldn't be surprised as well if Costa does switch it up and go to the ground if he is losing on the feet, or does sense some, get a sense of urgency that he needs to take it to the ground. But I don't think he's really going to need that. So I think I think Costa is able to keep Garcia on the feet and not strike him. So I think you see primarily a striking fight. Of course, Costa's threat of the takedown will always be there at the same time. So not too concerned in that respect, because again, I think Costa, again, we say it all the time, your grappling makes your striking better. And I think that's more the same in this fight. So, but yeah, give me Melk Costa to win this fight, by second round TKO. Next up, Joe Solecki. He is back against Dakar Klose. Solecki coming off that win over Carl Deaton. I mean, is it the most impressive victory? No, Deaton's really not a UFC name, but Dakar Klose is a guy who pretty solid. 7-2. You don't see him fight all that often, and I wish he would fight more. I guess it's just been a long layoff for Klose. This is his last win over in Dallas, Texas, over Rafa Garcia back in July of 2022. But Klose is back. Again, 7-2. So the guy at one point wanted to test free agency, didn't do so. He re-signed with the UFC. He's 7-2. I think it's a really good addition, or at least a really good keep for the UFC to keep this guy around, because Klose's losses in the UFC are a David Tamor loss back in 2017. We can forget about that. But the only other loss, being that crazy fight with Beneil Dariush over in Vegas, UFC 248. He almost beats Dariush until he gets knocked out, but still, that was a crazy fight. And I think Klose is pretty solid, and Joe Solecki's good as well. This is a really underrated fight between two underrated guys, and two guys who really don't get the recognition that maybe they deserve, because again, Klose 7-2 in the UFC, Solecki 5-1 in the UFC. Solecki's one loss being an ever so close split decision loss to Jared Gordon. And you know that Jared Gordon is solid in his own right. And Dakar Klose, again, Tamor, we can forget about that loss. He's 7-2. We can look at the other loss, and that's Beneil Dariush. So really, this is a good one between Klose and Solecki here. You look at the odds, Dakar Klose, an ever, so slight favorite at -125. Solecki coming back at you at +100. I do see Klose being the favorite in this one, but again, it has been, a lack of activity, which is a little bit concerning. Klose is, another one of those guys who can wrestle, you can strike as well. The Brandon Jenkins fight was 2 fights ago. His last finish, he beat him by knockout in the second round. What did you expect? Brandon Jenkins, really, again, not a guy that I thought should have been in the UFC. Beats Rafa Garcia after that. Garcia's tough. Again, Klose goes the full 15 with them, and he beats him by unanimous decision. We've talked about the Dariush loss. He's got a win over Bobby Green, who's in the co-main event, and, you're going to see what I have to say about Bobby Green later in this video. But yeah, Klose picked up the win over Bobby Green back in 2018, even though I think you can make the case for Bobby Green to potentially win that fight. I'm just saying. But Klose is all around really good. Solecki, again, coming off the submission win over Carl Deaton. I thought that was going to come sooner, honestly. I thought he was going to submit Deaton in a quicker fashion, but he beats him by rear naked choke in the second round. Beats Alex De Silva before that by majority decision. Loses to Jared Gordon. Beats Jim Miller. Beats Austin Hubbard. Solecki's all around really solid. Of course, it's going to be the grappling and the wrestling that's going to win him most of his fights, and that's probably what he's going to do against Dakar Klose, or at least try to do against Dakar Klose, because if Klose is able to keep this fight standing, I think he wins. And that's where I'm going to base my pick around. And exactly, that's what I'm going to say. I think Klose does keep the fight standing. I don't mind Dakar Klose's takedown defense. 69% takedown defense rate so far in the UFC. Sure, he did get taken down 3 times by Rafa Garcia, but Rafa Garcia did not have him down for all that long in their fight in Dallas back in 2022. I just don't think Klose is going to get stuck on his back for that long in this one. I don't think he's going to let Solecki take his back, or let Solecki, fight for a submission. I just don't think that's going to happen. I think Dakar Klose will get back up to his feet, because I think he will get taken down at some point in this fight, but I don't mind the defensive jiu-jitsu and the defensive grappling out of Dakar Klose, and I will trust in those abilities for him to win this fight. So I'm going to take Dakar Klose, and on the feet, again, I do like Dakar Klose a lot better than Joe Solecki. Klose really mixes his shots up well. His boxing's solid, and again, all around, it's better than what Joe Solecki's got here. So again, if you're Solecki, you're trying to take this fight down. If you're Dakar Klose, you are trying to keep this fight standing, and you are trying to win eventually this fight by knockout. I don't think a submission or a knockout happens. I do think this goes the full 15, considering I don't think Dakar Klose is going to get full stretches of time where he is able to put enough damage onto Solecki in a short succession where he does get the finish. I think it will take a minute. So I don't think Klose will get that finish. I think it will go the full 15, but I think he will do enough damage, and he will do enough work to win the fight. So give me Dakar Klose. I know he's 35 years old, and time is really not on his side if he's going to make a push at least to the top of the weight class. And again, that's why I like to see the guy fight more. I believe he's been dealing with injuries. I'm pretty sure he's been dealing with injuries, but I'm glad to see him back. I'm glad he's on this card, and I do think he's going to bounce back with a victory. So our next fight here, Cody Brundage takes on Zach Reese. Now, Cody Brundage was the center of controversy in his last fight in the UFC. It's the fight that he's got against Jacob Malkoun. Now, I'm definitely not someone who had money on Jacob Malkoun in that fight. Definitely didn't screw up any of my parlays. But yeah, Brundage in that one, and it's kind of Malkoun's fault too, but illegal elbow to the back of the head. Brundage says no mas, can't fight anymore, live to fight another day, pick up the win in the UFC. I would like to see a no contest on that one, but it's fine. They call it a DQ win for Cody Brundage. And he fights less than 3 months later. Okay. This was the problem everyone had with Aljamain Sterling, right? But the thing is, okay, Aljo didn't do this, right? When Aljo got hurt, when Jan hit him with the illegal knee, it's not like Aljo jumped right back in there a couple months later. you jump back in there like a year and a half after the loss. Because again, if you truly do take that much damage from an injury like that, you shouldn't be fighting so quickly. Well, that's what Brundage is doing. Brundage is fighting less than 3 months, basically 2 months after the loss, or sorry, the win to Malkoun. But again, it was an illegal elbow to the back of the head where he was deemed physically unable to compete or physically unable to continue the fight. So, you know, he was on a 3-fight losing streak, losing to Michal Zolshashek. He got knocked out in the first round. He got arm triangled by Rodolfo Vieira, and he lost to Cedric Dumas by unanimous decision. Before those fights, you know, he started off his UFC run pretty well, actually. Lost his first fight to one Nick Maximov, but then came back, beat Dalja Lujanbula by guillotine in the first round, a fight where he gets dropped, scrambles, gets the guillotine, wins the fight, and then drops Trayshawn Gordon his next fight, but then again goes on the 3-fight losing streak. He gets a UFC debutant fighter here in Zach Reese. Reese is 6-0, coming off his last win of the Contender Series where he picks up a win by armbar in the first round, but this is a guy in Zach Reese who can win it on the ground and win it on the feet as well. All around a really skilled fighter here, and you look at his run prior to the UFC fights, or he fought in Fury prior to the UFC, never won a championship over there, even though there's guys like Paris Moran who never got a shot in the UFC, but it's fine. Reese, you know, did well in Fury, went 3-0 over there, picked up a couple good wins, beat Aaron Phillips over there in Fury. You know, all wins by knockout outside the UFC in the first round, won by submission. But again, Zach Reese has never seen a second round. And he's going to go in there and he's going to absolutely blitz Cody Brundage. The UFC put Cody Brundage in the spot for a reason. They want him to lose. They are not happy about how the way that Jacob Malkoun fight ended. And it's not like the UFC loves Jacob Malkoun by any stretch of the imagination. Jacob Malkoun is not going to... I'm sorry, he's not going to draw fans and he's not the most, you know, entertaining fighter, but man, it's just not what you want to see, you know, out of that fight with Brundage and Malkoun. The UFC sent Zach Reese here on a mission. They sent him to go out there and finish Cody Brundage in the first round, and that's exactly what's going to happen. Cody Brundage will not be able to keep up on the feet, and seriously, if that elbow did that much damage, he should not be in there, and Zach Reese should be able to take advantage and at least work on a compromised chin. The brain shouldn't take all that much damage if truly that is why Brundage couldn't fight the Malkoun fight. If I'm believing Cody Brundage here, he should not stand a chance in this one. I like Reese way better on the feet. I honestly like his grappling too. I don't think we should underestimate, though, even though how bad the Malkoun outcome was, and, you know, he did get taken down in that fight. He was being grounded and likely on a way to a 10-8, maybe probably 10-9, but still could have been 10-8 in that first round. Brundage's grappling isn't horrible, so I don't think Reese is able to go in there like he did in the Contender Series and just mop the floor with him in terms of grappling. I think it will be a stand-up game, though, where Reese is able to really win the fight. I don't think Brundage's grappling game is honestly all that horrible. I think, again, a lot of guys would lose like that to Jacob Malkoun, so I think Reese goes out there and does what I think he's going to do. I think he's going to go out there and blitz him, so I think Reese wins the fight by first-round knockout. I don't think it's that close. This is the fight that gets Reese on the map in the UFC, and he wins the fight by first-round knockout. On it to the main card, I do believe. I don't know if this one's getting bumped because Asmat Mirzakhanov and Khalil Roundtree Jr. was supposed to be on this card. That fight got canceled, and next week, Roundtree will be fighting Anthony Smith. You know, a lot of people hate Anthony Smith, and maybe Khalil Roundtree Jr., and the reason that Anthony Smith took the fight was because Khalil Roundtree Jr., you know, maybe Roundtree insulted Anthony Smith's family, but I don't know why Anthony Smith's taking the fight. I mean, credit to him for saving the day. I'm sure he's going to get a pretty good payday for that, but he's coming off a win over Ryan Spann. You think, like, I don't know. I thought Anthony Smith would be getting a better fight than that. But if he beats Roundtree, it's going to be kind of, I think, honestly, the Sean Strickland effect. The UFC will do him a favor if he beats Roundtree because, you know, Sean Strickland saved him on the card with the boost Magomedov. Nobody wanted to fight Magomedov. He picked up the win over Magomedov, and he got a world championship shot. Now, I'm not saying Anthony Smith is going to become the world champion, but I think, again, if he can beat Roundtree, they're going to do a big favor for him. Or even if he, you know, even if he loses, I think that really doesn't damage him all that much in the rankings. But we'll talk about Anthony Smith next week. First up, Miesha Tate taking on Juliet Avila. I'm surprised Miesha Tate still fights. Now, Miesha Tate was fighting when I was first starting, when I was, you know, first, like, really getting into MMA. One of my first memories, like, really watching MMA seriously, other than, like, the pay-per-views, actually, this is wrong. I remember watching Chael Sonnen beat Shogun Rua, but, like, you know, this is 2013. I started watching earlier than that, but still, 2013, you know, my first memory of female fighting in the UFC, other than Liz Carmouche, Ronda Rousey, is Kat Zingano, Miesha Tate. And Kat Zingano went in there and beat Miesha Tate on the Ultimate Fighter finale card. That was the same card where I believe Kelvin Gastelum beat Uriah Hall to become the Ultimate Fighter. Now, why is that relevant? It's not. Well, it kind of is. It's just saying Miesha Tate's been fighting for a very long time. Now, Miesha Tate, I don't think should still be fighting. Like, again, I know Zingano's still going to be in PF Bellator, and, you know, like, sure, Zingano still fights, but Ronda Rousey sure as hell doesn't fight. Ronda Rousey's doing dates for ROH. She's gonna wrestle for Ring of Honor. which is weird. I don't know if, how many people watch wrestling, and I'm recording this right before Survivor Series, so if CM Punk came back tonight, that's cool. WWE will probably get me to watch some of their product again if CM Punk comes back. But as someone who only watches AEW, and I guess a little bit of Ring of Honor, Ronda Rousey leaves WWE. She joins Ring of Honor. Well, at least she's working some dates for Ring of Honor. If you just don't watch AEW, if you remember Ember Moon from WWE or NXT, she's now Athena in Ring of Honor. She's like their big star for Ring of Honor. They're owned by AEW, which is a big thing. I need to wrap this up quickly. But Tony Khan, who owns AEW, brought Ronda Rousey in, we're assuming, to Ring of Honor to work a big match for the pay-per-view in December for AEW against Athena for the Ring of Honor Women's Championship. But it's just weird that I will give credit to Ronda Rousey. I did not like her in WWE. I thought she was horrible in her second run in WWE. But the fact that she is willing to still go to Ring of Honor and not even barge her way onto AEW television, she's willing to go to Ring of Honor that doesn't really get the greatest ratings, at least for now, before they get their television deal next year, is respectable. And I respect what Ronda Rousey is doing. Seriously, I think that's great. If she really wants to wrestle, she doesn't go to AEW, she doesn't go back to WWE. No, she goes to Ring of Honor to actually work. That's respectable. Now Ring of Honor is kind of just becoming developmental for AEW, but that's cool. They have some big stars like the champs Eddie Kingston, probably BJ White soon, I think, or Swerve Strickland. Anyways, enough with my wrestling rant. Miesha Tate's fighting Julia Avila. Now, again, Tate has been around for a very long time. She is coming off back-to-back losses to Ketlen Vieira and Lauren Murphy. Believe it or not, if she beat Ketlen Vieira, she might have been in a world championship fight after that. But then she loses to Vieira in a main event, and then she loses to Lauren Murphy at 125 pounds. I don't know why she went to 125. I truly don't. She was booked against Mayra Bueno Silva after that. She had to pull out of the fight, I believe. Did Tate pull out of the fight? Yeah, Tate pulled out of the fight. Bueno Silva got the fight against Holly Holm instead. Bueno Silva beats Holm, and now she's in a world championship fight in January against Raquel Pennington. Right? Tate's fighting Julia Avila. Avila's always been a fighter who just hasn't been all that active. Her last fight's in 2021. It's a win over Julia Stoltzfus. She was booked against Raquel Pennington later that year. Never fought her. She's 3-1 in the UFC. She's always been a good fighter. Her first fight in the UFC was Penny Kinzad. She beats her by decision. Where's Penny Kinzad been? I have not heard her name in a while. Oh, never mind. She fought Kelly Vieira earlier this year. I totally forgot about that. Anyways, again, that proves my point. I've gone way too long in this one specific fight. I'm going to wrap it up quickly because, again, I'm kind of crunched on time here. I'm going to the Sharks game in a minute. But and we still have 5 more fights. But Avila's always been a fighter who has not really been seen much as a top contender in the weight class just because she hasn't been all that active. This is the fight where she can break through. I remember when she beat Stolyarenko in the summer of 2021, she was calling out big names. She was all right. Or she had the interview with Bisping. She was all right, I'm ready to finally break into the top 15, which is great, but she hasn't fought since. They did give her Pennington, gave her the opportunity. She couldn't fight. They're giving her an opportunity again. She has to cash in. And I think, again, she has to cash in because Miesha Tate's not the fighter she once was. Avila will be able to beat her. I know Avila's not, she's not young either. She's 35. But Avila, I think, will be able to be there at the end of 15 rounds. I think she's more active on the feet. I think all around she's the better fighter. Avila is going to be a washed-up Miesha Tate who should have never came back, who should have just stayed retired. She should have stayed retired, losing to Nunes and Pennington. Nunes was champ for the longest time. Pennington could be champ again. Tate should have just stayed retired and never came back. I'm sorry. But yeah, give me Julia Avila by decision. Okay, maybe this is on the prelims too. I don't know. Clay Guida and Joaquim Silva is our Joaquim Silva is our next fight. Clay Guida, again, another one of these guys who's been around for forever. He's getting Joaquim Silva here. And for Silva, this is a guy who, I thought he was just going to get rolled over in his last fight. Sure, he was coming off a win over Jesse Ronson, but he's fighting Arman Tsarukyan. And Arman Tsarukyan is supposed to go in there and absolutely be the ever-living hell out of Joaquim Silva. And Silva stays in the fight. Now, Tsarukyan dominates, sure. But still, that's a guy Tsarukyan's supposed to get out of there in 5 minutes. It took him a good 13. Right? Silva stays in the fight. He has lost 3 out of his last 4. The one win being over Jesse Ronson, who I don't believe is no longer in the UFC. Sure, it's a knockout victory. And yes, Silva does fight tough guys. Hawk Paras, Ricky Glenn, Arman Tsarukyan, Jesse Ronson. He does fight tough guys. I believe he'll be looked at as a favorite in this fight. You're giving him -220. Clay Guida coming back at you at +180. I would not favor Joaquim Silva in a lot of fights, but unfortunately, I will favor him in a fight against Clay Guida. I like Clay Guida, the Carpenter. He's been around for forever. He is 41 years old, but man, how much does he have left in the tank? I don't know how much he truly does. He's only on a one-fight losing streak. Like, he has traded wins and losses dating all the way back to 2020 at this point, because he loses to Bobby Green, beats Michael Johnson, loses to Mark Madison, beats Leonardo Santos, loses to Claudio Puelles, beats Scott Holtzman, loses to Rafa Garcia. If the trend continues, he should win the fight against Joaquim Silva. And I think it's a very winnable fight in all fairness. Like, it is a super winnable fight for him. Because Guida will mix it up on the feet. He will mix up the wrestling. He will incorporate the wrestling with the striking as well. But like, in all fairness, yeah, Guida can win this fight. You know, he gets into these fights where he just, you know, strikes and he tries to mix it up, takes the fight down when he needs to, because, you know, the guy's got a chin. Clay Guida, when's the last time Guida has been finished in the feet? I know he got absolutely wobbled by Jim Miller back in Newark in 2019, but the last time he's been finished in the feet with strikes was when he got knocked out by Brian Ortega in 2016. So Guida really doesn't get finished like that. Now, again, Joaquim Silva is, you know, a mix. Like, he'll strike and he will wrestle as well. He'll show the jiu-jitsu, but recently has been more the striking out of Joaquim Silva that has at least won him fights, or has been the approach for him in fights. But I think this is super winnable for Clay Guida. I think a lot of people are taking Joaquim Silva by knockout. Don't forget, I know he's 41 years old and will be 42 in 2020, or like will be 2020, or sorry, will be 42 in about a month. That will be Clay Guida. But I don't think Silva knocks him out. I don't think the power that Silva has is anything that's crazy. Sure, the flying knee win over Jesse Ronson's cool. That's great. But it's nothing that Clay Guida hasn't seen. It's just like, I think if anything, Silva wins by decision. And if Guida wins, I think it will be by decision too. I'm actually going to take Clay Guida in the fight. I'll take the underdog here. I'm not all that impressed with Joaquim Silva. Sure, he went 15 minutes, or almost went 15 minutes with Tsarukyan. He was still losing the fight. You know, there was no point in that fight where Joaquim Silva had arm on Tsarukyan in incredible danger, really. It just took Tsarukyan to, you know, it took him some time to win the fight. Joaquim Silva's not the guy he used to be either. He's lost 3 of his last 4. He's 34 years old. He hits hard, but as a famous man once said, everyone hits hard. You know, like, I don't think it's that much different. Sure, on the ground, I don't think Guida's going to have the outlet to really, you know, get reckless with his wrestling, but I think the opportunity will present itself at times where Guida is able to mix it up in terms of the wrestling too. I think Guida wins. I think the mix of wrestling and striking is going to be huge in this fight. I think the Carpenter Clay Guida goes out there and beats Joaquim Silva. I think it's going to go the full 15. I think Guida does win it by unanimous decision. On to our next one. My goodness. On our next one, Puna Soriano versus Dustin Stoltzfus. I don't know why the UFC loves Puna Soriano so much, but they gave him this matchup, but it seems like a pretty easy victory for the guy. Back on a main card, I don't know how currently this has the main card spot over Guida and the Miesha Tate fight, who are way bigger names, but I don't even know how Dustin Stoltzfus is still in the UFC. This is a guy who I believe is 1-4 in the promotion. I think they kept him around because he's beat Joe Pyfer before. I think really that's it. He beat Pyfer on Pyfer's first run in the Contender Series. Sure, it was an arm injury from Pyfer. Stoltzfus takes him down. Pyfer tries to plant with the right hand. I think it was the right or left. I don't know. It was one of the hands. He tries to plant, breaks his arm. Okay, Stoltzfus was winning the fight up until that point, but it was really only the first round. Stoltzfus was a big favorite. I don't know. But Stoltzfus' run in the UFC hasn't been great. Has not been great at all. He's lost to Kyle Dawkins' first fight, loses to Rodolfo Vieira, gets subbed in that fight, gets subbed by Gerald Mearshart, beats Dwight Grant by unanimous decision, and turns it straight into a fight where he gets head kicked in 19 seconds by Abus Magomedov. Now, is Abus Magomedov the guy that we thought he was? I never really thought he was the guy, honestly. I made a full video about him, but I really never thought Abus was that guy in the UFC. I thought he was good, but I never thought he was going to be like a top 15 guy. Well, no, I thought he was going to be a top 15 guy, but I never thought he was going to be like a title challenger or anything. He's 1-2 in the promotion. Sure, lost to Sean Strickland, who's the champ, but the Kyle Barhaio fight, he didn't look great in, if we're being honest. But Stoltzfus gets head kicked in the first round by Abus. Like, Abus, again, isn't great. He's not, like, elite, but he will still beat guys like Dustin Stoltzfus, and he will knock them out in the first round. I don't understand why Stoltzfus is getting this fight against Puna Soriano, though. I don't understand it. Because, like, I don't know why he's still in the promotion. Puna, like, I know he's lost 3 out of his last 5. Soriano lost to Roman Kopylov. He beat Dalcha Lujanbula before that. Lose to Nick Maximov. Lose to Brendan Allen, who is making his way in the top 15. But Puna at one point was 8-0 before he lost that Brendan Allen fight. It is undeniable that Puna Soriano does hit hard. He is a guy who will go out there and he will try to, knock your head off. And unfortunately for Dustin Stoltzfus, this is going to be the result of this fight as well. Again, I'm not all that impressed with Puna Soriano. I'm really not. I don't think he's the greatest. I'll just be honest with you. I don't think he is. But I think in this fight, again, I think Puna wins, and I think Puna wins pretty easily here. I don't think Stoltzfus is really that guy. I think Puna will be able to take advantage of not a great striker. Stoltzfus has been beaten on the feet, and he's been beat on the ground in the UFC. Where does he win? That's my question. Where does he win? I don't see where. I don't think Puna's a top 15 guy, and I think the UFC really likes Puna, but he's still going to win the fight. Soriano by first round knockout. Let's now get into the big four on this card, because these four are good. Sean Brady, Kelvin Gastelum. What a fight. This is a good one. And there's four tremendous fights on this card. Gastelum and Brady is a really good fight. Because Kelvin Gastelum, again, looked really good in the Chris Curtis win. Chris Curtis, bitched about whatever the decision, like he always does. But, Gastelum looked really good in the fight. And now he's booked against Shavkat Rakhmonov. Luckily for the career of Kelvin Gastelum, that fight did not happen. But yeah, Gastelum beats Chris Curtis. Looks good. Outstrikes him, fight the night, back and forth war. Kelvin Gastelum is built for that. That is the style of fight Kelvin Gastelum has fought before, and that's the style of fight that Kelvin Gastelum will continue to fight. He's taking on Sean Brady here, and Sean Brady got outworn on the feet by Bilal, remember the name, Muhammad. Sean Brady got outlasted on the feet by Bilal. What's going to happen in the Gastelum fight? Gastelum's wrestling. Don't forget the wrestling base out of Kelvin Gastelum. Gastelum has been there and done that before on the ground. Sure, he's been taken down before, but only by the elite guys. Robert Whittaker is really the only guy to have a lot of success on the ground against him, and then that in a prime Chris Weidman. Gastelum can still wrestle. He just doesn't go to it offensively, at least, because he's trying to mix it up on the feet. And Gastelum, again, has got a crazy chin on him. He doesn't really get knocked out. And he's able just to go back and forth on the feet. I know Jack Hermanson caught him in a heel hook once upon a time. Sure, that is going to happen to you. Hermanson is that good on the ground. He's able to find submissions. That's fine. But Sean Brady's not going to catch Kelvin Gastelum in a heel hook like that. That's not going to happen. Because if Sean Brady's going to beat Kelvin Gastelum on the ground, he's going to go out there and he's going to out-wrestle him, and he will prove that he is the way better wrestler and the way better grappler. Personally, I don't see it happening. I think Gastelum's able to get out those spots. When you look at the really good wins Sean Brady's had, the submission win over Jake Matthews does look good. He's got a win over Christian Aguilera where he submits him by a guillotine choke in 2020. And he's had other fights against the likes of Michael Chiesa and those type of guys where he's been able to go out there and just outgrind them on the ground and just outwork them down there. I don't think he does that to Kelvin Gastelum, because truly, who has done that to Gastelum since Weidman submitted him, really? Because, yeah, in that one, Gastelum dropped Weidman early in the first round. Weidman, composes himself, wins the second round, goes in there in the third round, takes him down, submits him. No one has really been able to hold Gastelum down like that. Sure, Whittaker took him down a couple times, but again, Gastelum was able to get back up, and it was primarily a striking fight that Rob won. So I don't think Sean Brady's able to fight a Sean Brady style of fight against Gastelum. I just don't think that's possible. I think that's how good Kelvin Gastelum still is. I still trust in Gastelum a lot. And I think Gastelum's going to win this fight. I think, again, you get these guys on the feet. Kelvin Gastelum is going to give Sean Brady hell. He's an underdog in this one. I think there's a lot of good plays here for plus money in these final four fights. I'm not going to give away my next three picks or anything, but I'm going to take Kelvin Gastelum. Again, if Bilal Muhammad knocks out Sean Brady on the feet, Kelvin's going to do the same exact thing. But again, it's different because Bilal is able to keep the fight standing because those are two wrestlers who, two wrestlers who were forced to strike. Bilal was the better striker between him and Sean Brady. It's undeniable that Kelvin Gastelum is the better striker between him and Sean Brady. However, big difference is, can he keep Sean Brady from taking him down? I think he will. Kelvin Gastelum is going to win the fight. Give me Kelvin to win this one by second round knockout. On to our next one. It is the bantamweight debut for the former flyweight world champion, Deiveson Figueiredo. He'll be taking on Rob Font in this one. What a fight. Font gets another big one after losing his last fight to Corey Sandhagen. And in all fairness, not the greatest fight. That was a fight where Sandhagen said he's a wrestler now. He had an injury, arm injury. It's fine. I really don't take anything away from Corey Sandhagen in that fight. He wanted to keep the fight on the card, and he wins. He got his win bonus and everything, and he's kept his name, of course, in that title talk. Of course, it was originally supposed to be Umar Nurmagomedov. Nurmagomedov pulls out. Rob Font took on a short notice, and he loses. He gets Deiveson Figueiredo here. Figueiredo will no longer be killing himself to make 125 pounds. I think that's good. I think that's a really good thing because, again, Figueiredo did not look great in that last Moreno fight. Not at all. I think a lot of people thought he looked bad in the second fight. Sure. The third fight, though, he kind of turned around. He won the fight, and we're thinking, okay, maybe Deiveson's back at 125 pounds. But then the fourth Moreno fight didn't really look good. Moreno just wrestled him, and then finished him eventually in the third. It's just Moreno was so much quicker. Moreno just beat him to the punch every single time. I was interested to see if Figueiredo was going to fight Manel Kape, because that was booked at one point at 125 pounds as well. I'm kind of disappointed it didn't happen, but Kape is going to be fighting Nicolau. They're going to get a rematch. I think Kape's going to win the rematch. But yeah, Figueiredo is going to go back up now, finally go up to 135 pounds. What Deiveson will we see at 135 pounds? Because he was big for 125. He was killing himself to make the weight. He's 35 years old, going down to a new weight class. He's 5'5". That's the problem. He's going to be short for the weight class. Rob Font, I believe he's like 5'9". He's 5'8". Yeah, Rob Font's 5'8". He's 36 years old. So two older bantamweights. But Rob Font is, even though he has lost 3 of his last 4, sure, Rob Font's a really tough guy to crack on the feet. He is a tough guy to beat up there, man. Like, you look at the fight that he had against Adrian Yanez. That was supposed to be the coming out party for Adrian Yanez, and Rob Font shut that down. I know he loses to Jose Aldo. He loses to Marlon Vera in 2 fights that were back and forth. They were wars, but again, Rob Font got beat to the punch in both of those. And the Sandhagen fight, again, Sandhagen out-wrestles him. Deiveson Figueiredo is not going to look to wrestle Rob Font. He's got a great squeeze in the guillotine, but I don't think that's going to present itself. I think you're going to see a striking fight. Rob Font, I think, is going to try to fight a very similar fight than the Cody Garbrandt fight. Avoid the power and just outwork his opponent with volume, because that's going to be a big part of this fight for Rob Font. For the New England Cartel Zone and Font, that's how he's going to have to get this one done. I don't think Figueiredo is going to really try to get this one down. And if he does, I think Rob Font will be ready for it. And I think Rob Font was just kind of thrown off guard by the wrestling and how good the wrestling of Corey Sandhagen is. And that's what kind of beat him in that fight. I think he will be ready for that, and I don't think he's going to let Deiveson really, work well on the ground off him. I think you're going to see a striking fight, and I think in a striking fight, I think Rob Font will get the better of Deiveson Figueiredo, especially Figueiredo up at 135 pounds. Again, I don't like it. I just don't. I think he's going to be small for the weight class. He was huge for 125 pounds. I think height-wise, he's going to be small for 120 or 135 pounds. I think Rob Font's going to be the way quicker fighter. I think, yes, Figueiredo will always have that crazy power. He will always have that one-shot knockout power. But it's a big difference getting hit from those guys at 135 pounds than it is at 125. Figueiredo was having trouble dealing with the power of Brandon Moreno at flyweight. He's gonna have trouble dealing with the power of Rob Font at 135 pounds. And I know, again, he's not killing himself to make the weight, so he's not dehydrating himself, and his chin's not gonna be as bad, sure. Still, though, I think Font's going to be able to match him power for power. Sure, I think Figueiredo does still have more power, but I think eventually that volume's going to catch up to Figueiredo. I think the volume is eventually going to get to him, and Rob Font's going to put those punches into him, and Rob Font is going to wobble him, and Rob Font's going to finish Deiveson Figueiredo in the second round. Again, I just think 135 pounds is tough for Figgy. I think it is. I personally would have liked to see the Dominic Cruz fight more, because Cruz, at this point of his career, doesn't strike with the most power, so it would have been interesting to see if Cruz could get that the full 15, or if not, Figueiredo lands a big shot, because I think Figueiredo wouldn't wilt under that pressure all as much. Again, I think Cruz would still win, but I don't think he would get finished because of volume in that fight. Font's the guy that can finish him with volume. I think Rob Font will do so. Give me Rob Font to win the fight by second round knockout. On to the co-main event. Now only being 3 rounds, in the lightweight division, Jalen the Tarantula Turner gets Bobby Green, originally supposed to be Dan Hooker and Bobby Green. I like this fight, I really do. I do worry about Jalen Turner making 155 pounds, though, in short notice, because Jalen Turner is huge. This is not at a catch weight. It's not at 160, not at 165, nor is it at 170 pounds. This is at 155 pounds of short notice for a guy in Jalen Turner who cannot make 155 with an actual camp for the Dan Hooker fight that he loses, and now he's going to go fight Bobby Green on short notice at 155 pounds. I worry for Jalen Turner, at least making the weight in this one. And I'm sorry if it gives the pick right away, but I feel like when I pick an underdog, it makes sense for me to give you the pick now, and then I'll explain myself. I'm taking Bobby Green to win this fight by first round knockout. I think Bobby Green is going to close distance early. I know there's a big reach advantage for Jalen Turner, but Bobby Green's still got the power. He's got the great boxing. He's going to close distance. 1-2, he's going to set down Jalen Turner in about 2 minutes. I don't think this fight lasts very long. I think you can get incredible value out of Bobby Green being an underdog in this fight because of the Jalen Turner, the quick turnaround, but the quick weight cut. I don't see how he makes 155. If this was at 165 or 170, I'd take Jalen Turner. And if this was on a full camp, I'd probably still take Bobby Green too at 155 pounds because I like Bobby Green a lot. But I feel just better with this result, with Bobby Green winning this fight by first round knockout against Turner, because of the weight cut that Jalen Turner will have. Again, He's a big guy. Jalen Turner is only 28. By the end of his career, he'll be fighting 170 pounds. He's a 6'3 lightweight. He's huge. I know that was his first weight miss in the Dan Hooker fight at UFC 290. I know. Still, though, if you're having trouble making that weight against Dan Hooker, you're going to have trouble making that weight against Bobby Green, too, on a short notice. Like, again, it was supposed to be Hooker and Green. I thought Green was going to win that fight. I still think Green wins. I think he wins this fight against Turner by knockout because I don't think Jalen Turner's chinny. I don't think he is. He's got really good striking. He can mix it up with the grappling, as you saw in the Brad Riddell fight. He knocks out Jamie Mullarkey. He smits Uros Medic. Those are all great wins. Lose to Gamrot in a fight he probably should have won. Lose to Dan Hooker in a fight I thought Dan Hooker won. Close fight, though. Because, again, Turner has a lot of success in that fight. He's got a lot of success, early in the fight, but Dan Hooker, as the fight went on, really did well in the third and in the second round. But I don't think this fight goes the distance. I think Bobby Green, for one, I have been on this channel before talking about how much I like Bobby Green and how good I think Bobby Green is. I think Bobby Green's, a really talented striker. He blocks punches, of course, with the shoulder roll, but he doesn't get hit all that often. He just doesn't. I have gone on here and made my case why Bobby Green beat Rafael Fiziev. I'm not going to go through that rant, but truly, I thought he beat Fiziev. I thought, I think that's how good of a striker Bobby Green truly is. I think Green goes in here and knocks out Jalen Turner in the first round. You saw what he was able to do to Grant Dawson. I know Dawson's not a striker, but he's able to go in there and actually absolutely torch the guy. He's going to do the same thing to Turner here. Turner's going to be depleted after that weight cut. He is going to kill himself to make 155 pounds, and Bobby Green's going to go in there and pick the scraps. He's going to pick the bones, and he's going to go in there and knock out Turner in the first. On full camp, different story. Different weight class, different story. 155, short notice, week's notice. This is a Bobby Green victory. Bobby Green wins this fight with the circumstance. Green wins, and he only keeps leveling up in this weight class, and all of a sudden, you're looking at Bobby Green at potentially a top 5 spot here. I know he's a fight away, but still, you're looking at, give us Bobby Green, Mateusz Gamrot. Winner gets a top 5 fight. I know Gamrot maybe is a little bit above that, sure, but seriously, that's what we're looking at this point for Bobby Green. That's the role this guy's on right now. Beats Tony Ferguson. Beats Grant Dawson, a guy that nobody's beat so far in the UFC. If he beats Jalen Turner too, who I know is coming off a 2-fight losing streak, but beats Jalen Turner, who people thought beat Mateusz Gamrot and had a very tough fight, a close fight with Dan Hooker, Bobby Green's only making his way up the weight class. Truly. I like to see Bobby Green against, I like to see him against maybe Tsarukyan, whatever. Yeah, actually, I'll give away the peg. I like to see him against Fiziev again. I know Fiziev's going to be out for a while. Seriously, I like to see him versus Gamrot. I want to see him in Gamrot next. I think Saint-Denis makes sense too, but I'd rather see Bobby Green and Mateusz Gamrot next. I think it's a really good fight. I wouldn't mind seeing Bobby Green, Dustin Poirier, UFC 300 as well. Just saying. I would really like that. I like that rematch a lot. And that fight happened, a long time ago? He fought Poirier. UFC 199, 2016. 101 events later, give me Bobby Green, Dustin Poirier too, because Bobby Green's going to beat Jalen Turner, and he will get it done in the first round by knockout. On to the main event. Beneil Dariush, Arman Tsarukyan. Interesting fight. Really interesting fight, because Dariush is coming off that loss to Charles Oliveira, obviously. Well-noted UFC 289 over in Toronto, I believe. Toronto or Vancouver? It was Vancouver, right? It was Vancouver. He loses to Oliveira. You watch the fight, Dariush, just gets outstruck. Just gets outstruck in that first round. Oliveira is too much. He beats him in the first. This is a different fight, though. This is a very different fight against a very tough guy in Tsarukyan who, can strike, but will also be very wrestle heavy as well. I think this fight stems from the takedown. It's going to stem from the takedown that Arman Tsarukyan will. He's going to shoot. But it's dependent on what Beneil Dariush does from there. Can Dariush keep the fight on the feet? And if he can, what happens then? Because will Dariush shoot for a takedown of his own? And then what happens if this is just a pure striking fight? I think Benny's striking is underrated, sure. I just think he ran into an incredibly tough guy in Oliveira, because obviously that's what Charles is, and Charles will be fighting for the World Championship next against Islam Makhachev. But you saw the Gamrot fight that Dariush had. It looked really good. Gamrot couldn't really get going, and Dariush almost had him out there in the third round. I have a feeling this is how this fight might go with Dariush and Tsarukyan, but I think Tsarukyan... he's got a lot more skills. And I think Tsarukyan, he did lose to Gamrot once upon a time. I think Tsarukyan is still developing as a fighter. He's only 27. I think, he is still finding his place, at least in the lightweight division. And he's finding all of his skills, I guess, right? Tsarukyan's got power. He will be willing to go in there. He will be willing to strike with Benny for 25 minutes if it takes that. But yeah, sure. Tsarukyan will have more power than Dariush. On the ground, it gets interesting because Dariush is a good grappler. But what will happen once this fight hits the mat? Will Dariush look for a takedown of his own? He really hasn't gone wrestling heavy since the Ferguson fight where, he took advantage of Ferguson in that fight. But will we still see him shoot takedowns against Tsarukyan? I don't know. I really don't know if we do. Striking wise, I do actually like Benny here. I think Dariush is the better striker. I know, again, the Oliveira fight, sure. But I do think he's a better striker than Arman Tsarukyan. I believe it or not. I think Tsarukyan does have the power advantage. But all around skills, I do still like Dariush. You've seen what he's been able to do. Come back from almost looking out of it in the Dakar Klose fight. You see the Scott Hot Sauce Holtzman fight where he gets him with the spinning back fist. Like, Dariush has a lot of skills up there. He really does. And as long as he doesn't get knocked out early by Tsarukyan, I think he's got a really good chance to win the fight on the feet. I think he's got a really good chance to do more damage than what Tsarukyan's able to do up there. A lot of people taking Tsarukyan by knockout. I don't see it. I know that's how Dariush lost his last fight. I just don't see it happening again. I think that's just more of how good is Charles Oliveira, really, right? I think if anything, Tsarukyan wins because of, again, mixing up with the wrestling and the striking. But that's where this fight's so interesting. It's because of the wrestling. Who wins down there? Whoever wins and has the advantage, and whatever guy has the advantage down there and gets to dictate where the fight ends up is going to win this fight. I feel like it's obvious, but that's what it is, right? Whoever has the advantage down there will be able to pick where this fight goes. If they want it on the feet, if they want it on the ground. I think it's going to be Benny. I think Dariush will be that guy here. I think we're underrating Dariush's grappling a little bit. Obviously, he couldn't go to that in the Charles Oliveira fight much because the grappling of Oliveira and the jiu-jitsu of Oliveira. Dariush went into that Gamrot fight. He saw that he was the better striker than Gamrot. I think he's going to be better than Arman as well. I think, yes, there's the power. There's the fear of the power in Tsarukyan. That is 100% a thing. But other than that, I think Dariush will be able to take Tsarukyan into deep waters, and he will be able to take him the full 25. And I think at the end of 25 minutes, Beneil Dariush is going to beat Arman Tsarukyan. He will get it done by unanimous decision. I think Dariush will win those moments on the ground. I think he will. And then on the feet, I think he will win those as well. I don't think he's going to get knocked out by Tsarukyan. I think he keeps the fight standing, and I think Beneil Dariush will just out-volume him for 25 minutes. I think it will be a close fight, though. I think Tsarukyan will win rounds. I think he might win him on the ground. He might even knock down Benny at one point. But I think Dariush wins a close 3-2 decision. I think he wins a unanimous decision here and really just cements himself as a top dog in the weight class. He's still looking for that big victory. I know Gamrot was kind of that, but in a main event spot, this is Dariush's first main event, I believe, in the UFC, right? Yeah, first main event in the UFC. I think he gets it done. Tsarukyan's already had a main event. Dariush hasn't. We have not seen Dariush in that 5-round environment. I think we're going to see it here. And I think we're going to see Benny drown Arman Tsarukyan when it gets late in the fight. I think he's going to win. Again, I know we haven't seen him in this 5-round atmosphere before. We have seen Tsarukyan go 5 rounds, but I do trust that Dariush has got the cardio. He's been preparing for this. If you want to be the champion, you got to go 5 rounds. Dariush is the fight. If he wants to be the champion, he has to win this fight. There's no other path to the championship. He wins this fight, or he doesn't become the champion eventually in his career. He doesn't get another opportunity. He's never gotten that shot at the title. He has to win this fight to keep his hopes alive. I think he gets it done. It can be Beneil Dariush to win the fight by unanimous decision. And folks, that'll do it for our UFC Fight Night Austin predictions with Beneil Dariush and with Arman Tsarukyan in the main event. Again, my apologies if it's just a different video, if I was going a little bit quicker at some points. Got to get going. I'm going to a Sharks-Canucks game. I got my Canucks stuff on, but yeah, I got to get going too. Just on a time crunch with everything, but we'll have a more normal video next week with Song Yadong and Chris Gutierrez in the main event from the UFC Apex. So folks, thank you all for watching. Make sure that subscribe button down below for more, and Mamba forever.